theory. It's a theory and an opinion. I personally think that Ted kind of did the EP of Crazy from the Heat with Roth because I think he was a little pissed off the way he was treated on 1984 with Ed and Don Landy and the way he was shut out. I mean, this guy is a major fucking producer and a major record executive, and he's fighting to get the tapes. He's fighting to get in there to work. I mean, it was really unprofessional the way he was treated. He missed the deadline for delivering the album. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure he must have been quite peeved. This is my opinion, okay? And I think he's like, by doing the EP with David Lee Roth, he even said it in his book a little bit. Yeah, there's a little rub to Ed. A little rub. Now, here's the thing, is that, you know, the cat took the bait very hard, and, you know, Dave took the ball and ran with it, okay? I don't think he expected Dave to leave Van Halen, but when he did, I think the record company was like, great, thanks for fucking up Van Halen. And he's like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this. And he brings out his old plan from 1978, or 1977, rather. And he says, you know what? Let's get Sammy in that band. I just produced Sammy's album. Maybe I drop a hint to Sam. Sam is definitely an opportunist type of guy. And Ed and Al are sitting there licking his wounds. Michael Anthony go along with anything. So why don't Sammy, David Lee Roth left the band, and it puts the little seed in Sammy's head, and he knows that Sammy's going to go in there with his manager, and he goes in there, and maybe he doesn't produce the album because he doesn't want to seem obvious, and then he gets 2 Van Halens for the price of 1. Maybe Dave needs more of the hand to oversee him, okay, because he definitely needs a heavier hand to produce him. And Don Landy kind of oversees Van Halen over there. And Van Halen succeeds, and David Lee Roth succeeds, and now everybody's happy. We all got a platinum albums and this and that. So, there you go. That's what I think. How do you like them apples?
I think you put way too much thought into it.
Well, we want a Van Halen podcast. What do you want me to do?
Well...
All right. Moving on to letter number 9.
The only thing I'll say to that is, whatever its motives were, I definitely think he underestimated how well Dave's Crazy from the Heat EP was going to do, and it backfired.
Well, I tell you this much, those videos were high production, and they had to have budgets, and budgets need to be approved. They don't fall from the fucking sky. And he was on the cover of Rolling Stone, he was on David Letterman, somebody was giving him a push behind the scenes. That doesn't just happen. That is made to happen. Okay?
I hear you.
All right. Letter number 9 comes from Marcus Brixa from Winter Haven, Florida, and he says, Dave and Dave, I'm a huge fan of your podcast and have listened to every single episode since the very first one. Thank you so much for keeping up with this great podcast, keeping it going, and please keep it up. I wanted to put my 2 cents in regarding the mailbag letter from the last episode. Letter number 12, I think it was colorfully described as Ron from the Midwest. Talk about the alternative keyboard solo for Right Now. I agree that the Right Now solo is a huge part of that song, and it is one of my all-time favorite Eddie solos from the Sammy era, and it is full of passion and tone and really elevates the song in a powerful way. However, I have a different opinion about the keyboard version. I am a professional musician who plays guitar and performs and records in many different styles. To my ear, the keyboard part does not sound like a solo at all, but rather a supportive background part that was intended to have a proper guitar solo on top of it. I say this because the keyboard part does not have the sense of melody and drama that we typically hear in a solo, and I think Eddie would have had a more active part down if this was his original intention. The part colorfully moves through the chord changes, but without melody. It is also mixed down much more than a solo would be, which you also commented on in your discussion about the solo. If my hypothesis is correct, then it begs the question, where's the solo? Why is it released without a solo? Perhaps the final tracking was not complete and the solo that we know and love had not been recorded. Perhaps someone screwed up and sent the wrong mix. We have several instances where music got out but had the wrong take, i.e. Van Halen's Running with the Devil from the Greatest Hits CD. I personally really am glad they waited until the proper release for us to hear the solo because it's so freaking good. Anyway, I have been wrong before and will likely be again, but that's what my ear is telling me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, and of course, the thoughts of the ever-popular Midwest fucking Ron. Thanks for taking the time to read my first letter. Marcus Brixa from Winter Haven, Florida. P.S. I just turned 50. Diver Down was my first Van Halen album. Secrets is one of my all-time favorite songs, and I have seen every tour since 5150. You guys should date, Dave. You guys are very paired up.
I was going to say, he's my favorite Van Halen fan.
That's right. There you go.
He's the Florida version of me.
That's right. That's right. He's Florida Marcus. There you go. Yeah, well, I thank you, Marcus, and it's so nice to have you aboard, and we appreciate all your kind words. We do it for you guys. That's why we do it, as well as we enjoy doing it ourselves. Thanks for talking about the pod. It is a lot of work and time, so we are glad that you appreciate it. So, like we said earlier, I believe this was a remix to really go to lighter stations as an attempt to get more airplay, to make it a crossover hit. Dave, what do you think of that theory?
Well, it was similar to the letter we had before.
I know, but I don't know if you commented on that theory. What did you think of that theory about it?
Well, no, I definitely agree with that theory.
Yeah.
I think they were definitely going for a listenership that they didn't typically have.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, why else would you do it?
Yeah, exactly. I just think by taking the heavy guitar out, it makes it a little more approachable for another audience, you know?
I agree. Yeah. I totally agree with that. And again, yeah, I totally agree that quote-unquote keyboard solo was never designed to be a solo.
Right.
They just used it that way, and we're trying to get more of a broad listenership. Although, interestingly, that song never really charted that high, right?
It's incredible. I tell you, though, it really is, well, it's like Hot for Teacher in a way. It's a very career-defining song. It is constantly played. It's an anthem. Dave, would you go as far as to say, and this is how I feel, it's, I think, the most recognizable Van Hagar song, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And like you said, yeah, career-defining.
Yeah.
And it's one of those songs that over time, even though it didn't exactly like Hot for Teacher, like didn't chart that high for whatever reason when it came out, but definitely was played on the radio. The video was played. Well, and that's the thing with both those songs. Even though they weren't chart hits, they had defining videos for the times, and the song was that good. So all those years later, it's one of the songs for the band.
Yeah, it really is. It was also, used in that commercial. Obviously, as we all know, how popular the video was, right? It has sort of a popular message, right? I mean, like in terms of, I would say of all the Van Hagar songs, it's got the biggest message, right? I mean, if you think about it in terms of, like Jump, for example, is, it's kind of like Take a Chance, Jump, that kind of thing, with life and this and that, whatever you want to call it.
I don't know. I think right now has a good message. When Sammy writes a good song, he writes a good song.
Yeah,
so
I think
he's got some. I think he has some other songs that have strong messages in them.
Oh no, he's got great ones, but I'm talking about in terms of the most recognizable.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. Oh, I would go all in on that bet. That right now is the most recognizable song of the Van Hagar era.
I tell you, I'm trying to look at it right now for its chart position, Dave. I don't
even think it went top 40.
I remember it was really kind of a grower, you know what I mean? And it's always looked at as the type of song that was bigger than it was, chart-wise, right? I mean, it kind of has that kind of vibe to it, right? Dave, it peaked at 55. How do you like that?
Yeah. No, right. No, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
that sounds
about right. I got to be honest with you. I think Hot for Teacher was higher. I'm going to check it right now. Hold on.
I don't think so.
Really?
I want to say it was like 56.
Okay, let's see. Oh my God, you were dead on. You're so on this time. 56.
Wow, look at that. I can't do the mailbag intro, but
unbelievable. Wow, that was like some sort of like Svengali shit. That was good, man. Wow, okay, so yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so on to letter number 10. And that comes from Johnny Booth from Fredericksburg, Virginia. And he says, "Hi, Dave and Dave. I hope you fine gents are holding up well. Well, I caught something today, and I thought I should share it. Did you happen to see Valerie Bertinelli's appearance on the Today Show celebrating her 60th birthday? She was asked about Wolf, and specifically if he was still playing with Ed around 3 minutes and 30 seconds in, and she responded by saying he's not, but then stopped herself, and said he'll always play with his dad, and she concluded by saying he'll be releasing his album later this year. It was pretty brief, and she didn't get into any other Van Halen-related details, but here's hoping she's right about that release date. Finally, regarding your talk about Greg Renoff's Ted Templeman book, and particularly regarding Pretty Woman being released before Diver Down, I recall an interview where Ed states that Diver Down was a response to pressure from Warner Brothers to not make another Fair Warning. Does this sound familiar? Ed said if they were to play a bunch of covers, particularly a song like Dancing in the Streets, that he thought they should play Pretty Woman too, since he considered it more of a rock song. Seems to contradict Ted's account, but that's nothing new, I guess. Anyway, please keep doing what you do. Cheers to your health and stay frosty. Johnny Booth from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Yeah, Johnny. Well, Johnny Booth is a rock star name if I ever heard one. That's fantastic. Yes, the Val thing for sure was definitely, we discussed it in the news, and it was a slip of the lip, to quote Rat, and yes, that took her by surprise, and she was off guard, but I think it tells us that Van Halen is a no more. I do recall that the interview that you mentioned about Ed was certainly in promotion of Diver Down, but the thing that threw me, I understand that Warner Brothers wanted a more commercially viable record than Fair Warning, and I get that, but the fact that they would release a song and then it would sort of do well, and then they would crank out an entire album in a few months just to follow up the single, that's the part that kind of threw me. I also never understood the Fair Warning issue. Like, there are 3 songs on Fair Warning that I think are totally radio-friendly, which is Unchained, Hear About It Later, and So This Is Love. How those 3 songs are not radio-friendly, viable singles, I don't understand. What about you, Dave?
Well, I think it's fair to say that Diver Down as a whole is more radio-friendly than Fair Warning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they didn't have a hit single from Fair Warning. They didn't have a hit single from Women and Children First either.
Yeah.
Although no reason for Warner Brothers to complain about either of those albums because they both went platinum.
Yep.
It's like, how greedy do you want to get?
Right,
I mean, the band is putting out platinum albums. What do you want them to do?
Very true.
But I know at the time, Fair Warning, even though it went platinum, was their worst-selling album.
Right.
And Warner Brothers was probably concerned about that. And so here comes Diver Down, and it's lighter, it's poppier.
Yep.
Pretty Woman was a surprise top 40 hit.
Right.
It did well, so the record company was happy. Ed wasn't. But, you know, the record company's there to sell records, so
right.
Not a surprise. But Fair Warning was not really designed to be a top 40 album. I mean, Ed was really fighting for what he wanted to do on that album, and he more or less got it.
Yep.
Right?
That's true.
You know.
Well, let's see. Letter number 11 comes from Lane Spencer. Okay, well, here we go. He says, thanks so much for the podcast. I listen to every episode, and I look forward to each one, and I love the way you bust each other's balls about your passion for Van Halen. I am the same age as you guys, and I'm a Van Halen fan from the first album. As a teenager, I idolized Eddie and learning all his guitar stuff. And he says he assumed that Michael Anthony played all the bass parts on the classic Van Halen albums, but now we know that is not true. Fair Warning was my favorite Van Halen album, and Hear About It Later is my favorite song, mostly because of the funky bass riff that gets played before the guitar solo. And as a kid, I assumed that Michael Anthony was playing that riff, but now I realize that it does not sound like his playing. Michael has a very loose and bluesy 1970s hard rock feel to his playing. This riff from Hear About It Later the bass and drums only for 2 measures before the guitar solo starts, is so locked in with the guitar solo that I think Eddie played the bass riff underneath his own guitar solo, and Michael Anthony may have played the rest of the song, but I think Eddie did that whole part to complement his own guitar solo. If you listen to Van Halen live in Oakland 1981 video on YouTube, when they play, hear about it later, Michael plays that part differently, and he puts his own spin on it. Same thing with the bass and drums to So This Is Love. In the live video, Michael plays the riff differently than what you hear on the record. I suspect that Eddie played a lot of bass on Fair Warning, such as the funky bass intro to Push Comes to Shove, which sounds